Welcome to Inside the SCCA, presented by RacingWire.com. I'm Brian Bielanski. Today, racing at the National Park of Speed. Road America, the June Sprint's coming up in a couple of days here, and my guest on episode, 226, maybe 227, I can never remember. My guest tonight, none other than SCCA Hall of Famer Peter Cunningham. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while. You and I have history you probably don't remember. It's a long, long time ago. I'm from your area, grew up near Lake Geneva, and back in the early, mid-'80s, I did an autocross school at County Stadium, and I was probably 16 years old. I was a snot-nosed kid who thought he knew everything, and my instructor was a guy back in the day known as P.D. Cunningham.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember that school. I'm certain you don't remember me unless I was a complete jerk. But that was so cool. And it was funny because when you're 16, you don't know anything, but you think you know everything. And I had no idea that you had all this skill. I'm like, it's some guy. He's teaching me. And now, 35, 40 years later, we're here. And you're a Hall of Famer. I am not. But it was pretty cool. So we start every show the same way, Peter. It's with a simple question, and I will throw it to you as well. And that question is, how did you get started in this crazy sport that we love?
Well, I had no background in racing and didn't know anything about racing, but stumbled upon a dude in a parking structure who was working on his old 911. And I didn't know anything about Volkswagens or, what his car was, but it seemed like a pretty fancy car. And we got to talking and he told me about autocross. And I'm like, wow, this is spectacular. I didn't know anything of the kind. So on May 4th, 1980, I showed up at the JCPenney parking lot in Milwaukee and signed up to do the autocross in my 1978 Saab 99. And it went from there. I won my class and I thought, well, I'm pretty good at this. I should do it some more. But everybody probably thinks that, and to win a podunk, local autocross doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna make a living driving race cars. But I didn't let that stop me.
It's funny, you go to your first autocross and you often get stuck in that novice class, and it seems like everybody wins their first autocross in their first novice class. It's like that's how they get you hooked. And then you realize that there's so much that you don't know, and being in the novice class, the people, even at the podunk autocross, there are so many people who are so much faster than you, but you don't realize it just yet.
Exactly. Yeah. But I just put one foot in front of the other after that, and had a series of things that happened that allowed me to get to the next thing. So I was a bit of a lottery winner.
The path to pro racing today is very different than it was back when you and I were coming up. How did you, first of all, tell us how you got from that Milwaukee autocross to eventually winning a solo national championship?
Well, I dove in head first and just autocrossed every weekend, and did that for a number of years. But at the same time, I went and tried pro rally. Didn't do very well at that. I wasn't lacking confidence showing up at my first rally, but got my doors blown off because a couple reasons. One was my RX-3 SP wouldn't stop or turn in a 40-acre field, but it was at the snowdrift rally in Michigan, and they should have called it the ice drift that year because the roads were pretty dry, but all the braking zones had black ice. And I was late in the running order as a rookie. And by the time I showed up on these stages, it was very slippy coming into each corner, and I didn't want to die. So I was braking early and often, but kind of gave up on the rally thing after a couple rallies late in 81 and early in 82, and then went road racing. And I went to a driver's school, my first driver's school at Mid-America Raceway, a now defunct racetrack in Wentzville, Missouri. Incidentally, the same place that Dorsey Schrader did his first school 10 years prior to me being there. And I got my second school waived, so I was able to do the regional the next day. And I don't know if we won that one, but then I went and had a friend drive my RX-7. That's what I was road racing then. At that point was a used showroom stock ARX-7. And I had a friend drive it to Hallett, Oklahoma, and I flew in from somewhere, and we, driving on the rain tires and taking the rain tires off and putting the other sets of wheels on with the Vilvin shaved Goodyear Gatorbacks, or maybe they weren't even Gatorbacks, they were wing feet probably, right, in that era. And I think I finished third at Hallett, and then I went back to Mid-America for a regional national weekend in April of 82 and qualified on the pole for the regional, got punted off in the first corner, and then came back and still drove to the front and won the regional, at which point they waived my next 3 regionals required for a national license and let me run the national the next day. And I don't know if I won that, but I was on the podium, and I drank a Budweiser at age 19, which I wasn't really a beer drinker, let alone a Budweiser drinker, or legal to drink beer, but I didn't let that stop me. And just, again, put one foot in front of the other. And I was going to college at the time and had a part-time job that allowed me to spend money on racing because my parents were paying for my room and board and schooling and everything. So I was pretty lucky that way. And just kind of got into it and had some moderate success. And then in 84, to answer your question about the Solo 2 championship, I think I finished second, and then first I finished third in 1981 at the Solo Nationals, and then second place. And then in 84, I won my class in the showroom stock C Saab 99 that I was running, that I had won the June sprints in 84 and the Sendiv championship in. So from there, I had a very fortunate situation to get hooked up with the guy that I had met while racing in that 1984 SCCA season. And we started a race team called the MPS Motorsports starting in 1985, and was the co-driver in this gentleman's Toyota Supra. And we never won any races, but we, showed well and were building an effort, and then came back with a Nissan 300ZX Turbo in 86, and then a Corvette in 1987. And that's about when I got hooked up with Honda, and then started a 35-year relationship with Honda.
What was because when you start a 35-year relationship, obviously you don't realize it's going to be a 35-year relationship. When you go back to that moment today, how did that come to fruition? And was it like a chance meeting? Was it one of those things that just kind of popped up out of nowhere? I'm always curious how these long-time racing relationships get started.
Well, I cold called American Honda Special Projects to hit him over the head for the use of a CRX SI to go ice racing in. And there was this new ice racing championship called Pro Ice that was starting in 1987 that a number of well-established racers were involved with. And we ended up winning the championship. My friend John Dozier and I co-drove in that endurance championship and won the championship by a half a point over the Archer brothers, and Honda won the manufacturers championship. And that was the start of my relationship with Honda. And at first they weren't really looking to adopt me. The head of special projects was a guy named Dick Erickson, who was a very special guy. And he ended up being like my Swedish uncle. And he was the mad scientist, crazy genius that was in charge of different race programs and, Bonneville and building a motorcycle for this or doing something for the Rose Parade. It was a special department at American Honda that did all kinds of different things. And because we won the championship, I was invited to go to the first summer race where they had their team of drivers, including Lance Stewart and Scott Gaylord, and a number of others, to test to see if they would want me to be a part of that Firestone Firehawk program. And as it turned out, I didn't have the advantage that I had over these California guys on the frozen lakes, but I was quick enough to be invited to be part of their program. So I didn't screw up in that first race at Sebring. And they said, okay, do you want to go to the next race? And I said, okay. So they would pay my airfare and lodging and expenses, and I would get a percentage of the prize money if I won. So I was a professional racer, for real, starting then in 87. I was doing pro racing in 85 and 86 and basically making my living, but I would have been better off, at the French fry machine at White Castle. But it was my start. And from there, there was never a contract or a long-term commitment from Honda, but I just kind of became one of their drivers and went from there.
Talk about for a second that northern upper Midwest racing kind of funnel with the Archer brothers, with you. That was an interesting time because growing up in that area at that time and seeing all of these, Tony Ave came out of Wisconsin as well. He was my dad.
Snowmobiler.
Yeah, my dad raced snowmobiles against Tony Ave, and then we paddocked next to them at the June Sprints on accident. It was very funny when my dad got back into SCCA stuff. But there was a huge amount of successful racers coming out of the Midwest at that time. Was there a reason for that?
I don't know. I think that driving in the winter and sliding around was a part of it. That's how I got involved. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of great racers that came from the Midwest.
It's interesting because when you look at like IndyCar and even now a little bit in the NASCAR world, a lot of those drivers came from dirt track racing, and the car control that you learned racing midgets and sprint cars on dirt that you could then transfer over to something better. It's just you can't get car control experience like that, just like you had from winter driving and ice racing. Right, and rallying and just driving around town. Yeah, it was just it was an God-given ability that I had, and it was got a lot of practice because I enjoyed driving so much. Yeah. Growing up in Wisconsin, one of the first things you get to do as a kid once you get your learner's permit is Dad takes you out on the lake to show you how to correct a spin and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a cool opportunity. We don't get that. I'm in Southern California now. There's no lakes to go on. to take your kid to go frozen. There's no slipperiness except maybe with the 405 right after a rainstorm and you get all the oil. And that's not where you want to practice learning how to do car control.
Exactly.
So Firestone Firehawk, what did that become? That became the Motorola Cup Series at some point. Were you part
Right.
of
It
that?
changed names. It was Firestone Firehawk from 85 to 95, and then it was the Motorola Cup, and then it was the Speed Vision, this or that. But also we were doing it was Escort Endurance Championship when I was with MPS in 85 through 87. And then I joined John Torok's team GRR in 88 and won my first two World Challenge Escort Endurance Championships, my first two SCCA Pro Racing Championships in 88 and 89. And then in 1990, we did the Sport Truck Championship, and we won that for John Torok as well in a Mazda.
Cool. And then World Challenge happened, and it's conservative to say that you are the World Challenge GOAT. I mean, I don't think anybody's won more championships than you, right?
I don't believe so. I've won 7 championships, and I probably have the most starts too. I don't know if anybody's eclipsed that, but I still have the most race wins, but now someone's only one behind me, George Kurtz.
Okay.
But it's a little easier now because there's 2 races a weekend, and back in the day, there was only ever 1 race per weekend. So he's done very well and is going to surpass me, maybe later this year.
Yeah. Are you happy about that?
Oh, it's perfectly fine. Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, it was a whole different era, and it doesn't really matter. So no.
Yeah. Those were some pretty good times for World Challenge. I mean, support racing for IMSA, support racing for IndyCar a lot of times, lots of exposure. That was a good series to be part of.
It was, yeah. It was the Speed Vision and then Speed, and that was a big boost for the series. But that was my whole career in these production-based cars. First they were showroom stock, and then they were more modified after that. But yeah, I never really aspired to do open wheel cars, and I was just taking the path of least resistance because there were manufacturers that would pay you to drive their cars in these, professional, semi-professional, or more entry-level professional series. So I drove not only for Honda, but drove for a Chevrolet Corvette Camaro team. We won a number of Firehawk races for mainline racing and Camaros, and did one-offs in BMWs and Nissans and different things, Mustangs. So yeah, I was racing in multiple series, and I was a Skip Barber instructor, so I'd go from a Skip Barber event to the race, and then I'd go home for a few days, and then I'd go to the next race, and then to a Skip Barber event. And so it was quite a whirlwind, and it was a blast. I mean, we were just having fun and not taking it too seriously.
I remember, or what I don't remember, is you not finishing a lot of races. You seem to bring home the car typically with all the doors and the wheels. The doors on, the wheels pointing in the right direction. Is that a testament to getting invited to drive all these different cars for all these different teams?
I would imagine so. I mean, I think that was always my goal. Not that anybody would have a different goal.
Sure.
But when I was first racing, in 82, 83, 84, if I had ever crashed my race car, I had probably driven it to the track. So I wasn't going to be able to drive home, let alone go to work the next day. So that was a real good incentive. But I do think that was part of my success in racing, was I would, more often than not come back with more than just the steering wheel in my hand.
Yeah. What's different today I mean, obviously there's different series, there's different opportunities. It's hard to have a career the length of yours these days. What's different about the world of road racing, sports car racing in North America today than it was back when you were just starting to come up?
I guess there's a number of things, but when I first got involved, it was, almost impossible to figure out a way to make it work. But there were things that we could do. If you were running in SCCA national races in that era in the late 80s, if you won in a Honda, you'd get I don't know if it was $3,000 or $5,000 or some big payout. And then if you were on Yokohama tires or some other brand of tires, you'd get money for that. So you could actually, not including the prices of the car. Of course, I had a free car from Honda, so it was even easier by that point. But yeah, you could break even or make money. But even still, it was impossible, and your odds of being successful were 1 in a million. But to answer your question now, it's really impossible, and I don't know what to tell young people who want to figure out a way to make it in the sport. One way to do it is to choose your parents better.
Today's professional race car driver, most of them don't make their full living driving race cars. They're either coaches or instructors with a school or that kind of thing. It's really hard, obviously, to do it full time just behind the wheel with a helmet on at a racetrack on a Saturday or Sunday. Was it somewhat that the case for you as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was, making good income from racing when I would do well, but I was supplementing that with my Skip Barber instructing and other coaching stuff to help make ends meet. And it was, you're not going to get rich doing it, but you can get by for sure.
Yeah. Where did real time come into play here? Because that's obviously, most people these days think of you as the real time guy. When did that all start up? How did that come to fruition?
That was pretty much with my first foray with the Hondas in the ice racing. And it seemed like a good name, and we needed a name for the race team, and it just stuck. And it's just kind of funny because now in, the 21st century, the word real time is, in the vernacular, and you can have real-time traffic and real-time weather and real-time information. So it was kind of a cool name.
Sure. All right, so let's do this. Let me take a quick break and thank the people who helped me put this on, and then I will come back and we're going to talk a little bit about June Sprints, Road America, and we got the sprints coming up here in a couple of days. We're recording this the week before, but this is our preview show for the sprint, so let's do that. Stand by with me for a second. And, of course, I want to thank all the folks who helped me do this. Ray Esports, the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA. We love Stevie Ray and all the things that he does for the sim racing community. And, of course, one of the cool parts about racing with Stevie Ray is that the sim racers treat it more like on-track racing with consequences, so where people aren't always running each other off the racetrack, as can be the case in some sim racing series, so it's very cool for them. Also, Solo Performance Specialties, Dave and his crew, they are at most of the National Series solo events, at Solo Nationals as well. If you need anything from them, you can see them at the event as well as go to their website, order them online. Give them a call if you need to. They're some of the best people out there, and whenever I need stuff for my solo program, that's the phone call I make. Of course, David R. Penterick and Associates. David is a longtime SCCA racer, GT1 driver, Now he's dabbling in Spec MX5 with the young kids, which is fun to see him out there doing that. Of course, he is a financial planner. If you need help on getting ready for retirement or any other aspect of financial planning, very smart in that regard as well. Go check him out. And then, of course, it's Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com, out here in Southern California, based at Buttonwillow. And they have a really cool way of doing their school, a lot of one-on-one, even before you get to the school. And, of course, it's Southern California, so you're pretty certain to have good weather if you come out here and do your school out here at Buttonwillow. They have full SCCA accredited licensing, so if you pass, you can walk out of school with your regional license. And get ready to, or your full comp license. I'm old. I said regional license. We don't even have those anymore. But yeah, you walk out with your license. They also have defensive driving schools. If you've got a youngster who's just getting behind the wheel, or even if you're an old guy and want to learn how to drive a little bit better on the street, go check them out. So those are the folks that help make Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com, happen. I could not do the show without them. And we've got a couple of new potential sponsors coming on board as well that I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for news on that in the next couple of weeks as well. All right, back here with Peter Cunningham, real-time racing, and is SCCA Hall of Famer, SCCA solo national champion, and multiple top 10 finishes at the solo nationals. And it is a pleasure to have him on the show. Peter, let's talk about the June sprints. One of my favorite places in the entire world, racing or otherwise, Road America, Elkhart Lake. It is so much history, so much. It's just such a unique place. What do you like about Road America?
Well, I stumbled in the door for the June sprints in 1980 as a recent graduate of high school, and had no idea what it was, and just absolutely, fell off the deep end into the pool and became enamored with it. And, I didn't know Road America from any other road racing track in America, but it seemed like a pretty nice and special place. But even now, as wonderful as it is and has become, as far as the infrastructure and the fan-friendly nature of it, people don't even know that go there just how special it is. I mean, I've been to racetracks certainly all over North America, and even a number of other tracks in Europe and Japan, and Road America is number one. I think that it's number one in the USA, in North America, and it's certainly in the top 5 in the world. Infrastructure-wise, it's probably number one for sure. As far as its setting in the Kettle Moraine with the rolling hills and the green grass and the trees, it's maybe second only to Spa in Belgium as far as its setting in the forests of is it the Ardennes Forest in Spa, Belgium. But just the circuit itself, it hasn't changed. It's 4.048 miles long, and it hasn't changed since, it first opened, 75 years ago, 70 years ago. We're celebrating our 70th anniversary this year at the track. So even with the repave a couple years ago, the organizers there went to great lengths to maintain the width and the cambers and the flow and everything about it. And it was, just an amazing job they did to not ruin anything when they repaved it. So it's one of your favorite places. It's my favorite place in the world. And I can't wait to get back there for the sprints.
My first time at Road America was for IMSA back in the mid-'80s. And the car there that caught my eye was the Jeff Brabham GTP car. And the sound of that coming down towards turn 5, letting off the wastegate, that little that you would hear, I was like,
It was a
what is?
Nissan, right?
Yeah, it was
He
the
was a,
Nissan. Yep.
hmm
Well, I was like, what is that sound? It was like something you could never heard anywhere else. And of course, the whole atmosphere. Of course, things were a bit wild and willy back in the '80s at Road America for the June Sprints, for IMSA. It was kind of, for a young teenage boy, a kind of a coming of age experience. And of course, then my dad gets to drive there. I get to drive there at some point in time. And it is just, and of course, then there's everything around. There's Siebkens. There's just the whole area. I've got friends who of course, with racing, we meet our friends at the racetrack, and I've gotten to introduce people to Friday Night Fish Fry. A little Wisconsin delicacy that, you feel like you've tried to kill yourself with deep fried food by the time you leave. But it's all of that kind of makes the area special.
You bet. Yeah, and the track food at Road America is, probably the best in the country, and the corn on the cob and ice cream and maybe some beer. So yeah, it's really quite a place.
It was funny. Only place I'd ever had a brat for breakfast was at Road America. And it seemed very odd to me until I went to Germany and realized that bratwurst is a breakfast sausage in Germany.
Right.
Yeah.
With beer.
Exactly.
There
Exactly.
too.
So.
Yeah, the brat egger at the Gearbox is a favorite for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Usually try to get 2 or 3 of those in one weekend, and then that'll be my fill for the year. What's the key to a fast lap at Road America?
Well, it's tricky because there's so many corners and such a long lap. You can, and many of the corners seem similar. Generally 90-degree corners to the left or to the right, and so they're hard to discriminate exactly. Turn 5 is very similar to turn 8, and things like that. But so the trick to getting a good lap is just to button together, all 14 corners to try to get that lap time. And it's easier said than done, but when you've had as many laps as I have, it gets a little bit easier. And you have to know where to go slow and where to go fast. Most people go too fast or try to go too fast in the fast corners, and then not near fast enough in the fast corners. So it's definitely a tricky place, and I would attribute it to just how long it takes to get around, because you don't get to see the corners very often because of how long the track is.
Well, and we've talked about this on other episodes about Road America. When you only have maybe 10 or 12 laps, you only get to see those corners 10 or 12 times a weekend. Other places, you might get to see every corner on the racetrack 25 times a weekend. It's easier to learn it, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's one of the big things, along with just the similarity between the corners, but yet knowing that you have to do things just a little bit differently in each of the corners is the secret.
We have the new pavement from a couple years back. That's pretty much seasoned itself in now, I think. Have you had a chance to run there this year yet?
Yes. Yep. I've driven around it at least, but I guess I haven't raced there since, or driven in anger since maybe last August.
So you might know where I'm going with this question. There's been some changes at the kink. Did you get a chance when you drove it to see what those changes are? What's your thoughts on how that may or may not change the racing?
Yes, I have only seen pictures of it.
Okay.
Maybe I drove around and saw it earlier this year when I was up there, but I haven't, driven at speed through there. But if I'm remembering correctly, there was one row of those chamfered concrete curbs. Now there's another row of those, and then the concrete block with the grass growing through it. That the idea there is to, give you a little bit of grip, but not encourage you to go there on purpose. But if you do end up there, you'll have a better chance of not wrecking out. So they went to great lengths, as I understand it, to do it correctly. And, a number of consultants were involved to try to do it. I haven't really heard the buzz about it. I don't know if people like it or don't like it, but what have you heard?
I haven't heard much on good, bad, or indifferent at the moment. Obviously, we had a very severe wreck last year at that location. Spec Miata drivers, 2 of them hurt pretty significantly. Both of them on the men, still not back in a race car yet. And there's been other wrecks at the kink over the years as well. And there was a whole discussion about whether, in some cases, even should the SCCA continue to race there. There's the motorcycle chicane. Should SCCA use the chicane? One of the allures of Road America is the kink. Can you do it flat? Should you do it flat? Too wide? All this kind of stuff. When you raced there for so many years, when you change a track like Road America, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know that they've changed the track. If you stay on the road, it's no different than it's ever been. I think it's more of a safety thing. So if you do drive off the road there, that you have a better chance of getting back on without ricocheting and hitting the wall on driver's right. So it's people I respect that are older than I am say that the kink is the biggest scary corner in the world. But that's part of the challenge of the track. And, you just have to go slow enough through there to stay on the road.
Yeah. I've never wrecked at the kink, thankfully.
I've never crashed at the kink, and that's something you're not supposed to talk about. That's like saying,
the
airport's never lost my luggage.
That's true. The kink never really, it's intimidating and scary. The one that always got me was turn 12 at Road Atlanta. Going up towards that big cement wall seemed much scarier to me than the kink, and maybe that's just because my mind's wired a little differently, but that's always seemed a whole lot more scary than the kink.
Yeah, or even turn 11 before the bus stop was at Road Atlanta. When you'd go through the dip and approach turn 11 was a corner then. I think that if they had put that, whatever you want to call it, 9, 10, 10 or 10A or whatever they call the left-right prior to turn 11, if they had just had it a little further away from turn 11 and closer to turn 7, you'd be able to get through it and then accelerate up the hill and then have to slow down for turn 11, because in any car, turn 11 is not a corner anymore. It's just flat.
Right.
And so you used to come up into turn 11 and the only tire that was on line was the right front, because the other 3 were drifting as you're over the brow. And that was hairball. That was a fantastic corner back then. But yeah, Road America has a number of tricky corners like turn 7 and turn 13. But that's what makes it so challenging and so great.
Do you have a particular race at Road America that you think about that with fondness, a battle, a particular race where you just dominated?
Sure. I mean, we've won a number of races there. Certainly winning the June sprints in 1984 was kind of my first big thing that happened in my young career. I mean, that was, it was in showroom stock C, not Formula Atlantic, but that definitely was a springboard. We've had a lot of good races. I won my second ever pro race there with Lance Stewart as my teammate in the Firehawk in 1987. So that was a fun one. And something memorable about that was Lance didn't have his Firestone patches or IMSA patch properly shown on his driver's suit, because it was, he didn't bother to do that. So they didn't let him on the podium. So I got to go on the podium and accept the first place trophies by myself. So that was a funny memory, that even though Lance did half the work, he didn't get to drink the champagne.
Right. So, what's racing looking like these days for Peter Cunningham? What are you up to?
Well, my last World Challenge race was at Road America in 2016, and I finished second that day to my teammate Ryan Eversley in a real-time TLX pair. We had a pair of real-time TLXs, so that was a great day. But then at the same time we were helping develop the NSX GT3 with HPD in that 2016 season, and coming into the 2017 season, I could have been one of the two drivers, or one of the four drivers for the NSX GT3, which would have been a really great thing to do, because I was the one that was involved in racing the NSX, in its inaugural race in North America in 1991, and helped develop it with the engineers from Honda Special Projects out at Willow Springs, and a lot of fond memories from that era, and as a 24-year-old kid. But with the advent of these GT3 cars with the traction control and ABS and all the nannies, it's kind of like a different skill set. And it's not a great comparison, but how a NASCAR driver from the 90s that was good on the ovals, they'd show up at a road course and they would, not do well. Or vice versa, if you were good at road racing, you can't just show up at an oval and do well. So I think that it's one thing to carry a CRX around a corner, or a no downforce car around a corner, and it's another thing to carry a high zoot, traction control, ABS, ground effects car around the corner. So I don't know. Plus, I was getting old, so I kind of just stepped away. But then I did Pikes Peak for 3 years and did very well there. But after the third time we did that in 2019, I thought I better call it a career with that, just because, a lot of bad things can happen if you fall off the road. If you take a wrong turn on Pikes Peak, you're in Colorado Springs before you know it. So, so since I retired after 2016, not including Pikes Peak, I've done the July vintage races at Road America every year. And that's it. But sometimes I'd run two cars on the same weekend. But then last year I did that race, but I also did the June sprints in a Honda Civic Type R TCR. And then we also went to Lime Rock for their vintage weekend on Labor Day. So did a few more races last year. Now this year, we've already done one race, the double majors race at Blackhawk a few weeks back. And now next up is the June sprints. And after that, if things are still on track, so to speak, we'll do the Cat Nationals at Road America and hope to qualify for the runoffs in that same Honda Civic TCR car that's now in the STU class.
So of all the things you've done, you don't have an SCCA Road Racing National Championship, do you?
Nope. I've only done the runoffs twice. I did it in 84, and I was the highest finishing front drive car, I think in 11th. I thought it was 9th, but I saw some results that said I was 11th, so I didn't quite remember that correctly. And then in 1988, I finished second after the impound shed was done, and with a broken shifter where I only had third and fifth gear for the last 5 or 6 laps.
Oy. So
no, I've never won that national championship. What have I won? Maybe 10 SCCA Pro Racing Championships. So if I don't win the runoffs this year, I won't feel too sad, but that's certainly the goal.
I got to tell you, I don't know how many people have won an SCCA Pro Racing National Championship, a solo national championship, and a runoffs championship. Has Randy Probst done that?
Randy Popes has certainly won solo 2 championships and national championships and pro racing. So yeah, I'd say that Randy is the one and only there. Michael Galati's won a number of national championships and pro racing championships. He's won 5 World Challenge championships, but I don't know that he ever even did solo, let alone win a national championship there. So yeah, it would be a good feather to have in one's cap, I guess, to try to do that.
What's the chance if you go to race a solo nationals? One or two.
I'd like
or 10
to go back.
times?
I haven't done that since 1993, where I finished 3rd in A stock in a friend's RX-7 that was bone stock because our Coney shocks weren't available in time, and I finished 3rd to Mark Daddio and John Ames, who are 2 guys that I respect a lot. It's always fun. I did that event in Salina or wherever it was other times for many years in a row, but not since 1993.
Well, if you wanted to go back, I guarantee you we'll find you a co-drive.
All right. Sign me up.
That'd be fun. All right, a couple quick questions before we let you go. What's the favorite race car you've ever driven?
Well, I guess it would have to be the first gen NSX that we won the 1997 World Challenge Championship in. Having been involved in the development of that car years previous to that, that was a great car. The Super Touring Honda Accords that I drove for the Honda of America race team were high zoot. But certainly the TLX GT was a handful and a pretty special car. So the BMWs that I drove in American Le Mans, those were great cars. All production-based cars, like I mentioned. I've done a couple of Formula Ford races, like at a Skip Barber weekend, and that seemed easy enough. But the production-based cars was definitely my history and my forte.
If you could pick one car over the course of racing history, over the 125 years of motorsports that you have never had a chance to drive and could, what would that one car be?
Yeah, I guess maybe a Trans Am car from either the late 60s in period, or even in the heyday when, Tommy Kendall and Dorsey and Ron Fellows and Boris and all those guys. I definitely aspired to do Trans Am in that era, and I never really had that opportunity because there wasn't a manufacturer that I was affiliated with that had a program there. So it just never happened for me, but that's okay. We had, I drove hundreds of different cars and for many different teams and manufacturers, and always had fun for sure.
I always thought that Merkur XR4 Ti would have been fun to drive back in the day. I think you've already answered your favorite track, Road America. What's one track that you haven't driven that you would like to?
Well, I've taken one lap in a Volkswagen rental car at the Nordschleife. I did race at the Nürburgring on the Formula One circuit with American Le Mans and Silverstone. I've driven in anger at Suzuka in a NSX Type R. But yeah, maybe what's the name of the track in Australia where they run with the all the
Red Bull
crazy?
Ring now?
No, in Australia, not
Oh, in
Austria.
Australia. Bathurst?
Bathurst, yeah, that
That could
is
be fun.
hairball for sure. That
Yeah.
would be fantastic to even go there and spectate would be great.
Yeah. All right, last two questions. What was your first daily driver?
A 1969 Cutlass convertible that I paid $915 for at age 15 and a half.
Nice. What is your favorite daily driver?
Let's see. Well, I would say my NSX Type S.
Nice.
It's not really a daily driver, but
Yeah, not in
I drive it
Wisconsin.
on nice. I drive it on nice days in the summer, and
Nice.
that car is absolutely an amazing machine that is very hard to crash.
Cool. This is where I give everyone a chance to thank all the people that help you do the fun stuff that you do. If you'd like to give out some thank yous, this is your opportunity.
Sure. Well, let's see. Got to thank Honda and Acura for all of their support over the years, and we've got some things we're working on to get some other old cars back out that have Honda H's or Acura A's on them. We're running on Hoosier tires this year in the club racing stuff, so they're always great tires to drive on. Very competitive. Redline Oil, we've been with Redline Oil since 1991, and they've always provided us great support. Sparco, it's another longtime sponsor. So just all kinds of people that have helped over the years. But
Awesome.
That's a good list for now.
All right. Peter, thank you. If you get time at the sprints, come on up to the broadcast booth. We'll put a microphone on you and have you chat with us for a few minutes. That would be awesome. And good luck at the sprints. Good luck trying to qualify for the runoffs. And I look forward to seeing you at Road America.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, and great to be a part of SCCA and have so many friends there. So it'll be a great weekend here in a few short days.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. Did you like what you heard? Subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network and the Racing Network on YouTube. Also be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. If it's not a good comment, put it on someone else's podcast. Follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is. It's @RaceAnnouncer on Twitter. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.